Right now, in this very moment, I want you to think about something you almost gave up on, something you started with passion, energy, certainty, something that once lit you up so strongly that you told yourself, this time is different. And then life happened. Pressure showed up. Doubt got louder. The results didn't come fast enough. And slowly, subtly, the voice inside started whispering, maybe this isn't for you. Maybe you should stop. Maybe you should settle. And here's what most people never realize. That voice doesn't show up at the beginning. It doesn't show up when things are easy. It shows up right before change. Most people quit at the exact moment when internal change is beginning, not because they are weak, incapable, or unmotivated, but because change itself creates an internal crisis that feels like something is going wrong. When a person decides to grow, improve, or step into a higher version of themselves, their old identity starts to break down. And that breakdown feels uncomfortable, confusing, and emotionally intense. The habits that once felt normal no longer fit, but the new habits have not yet become automatic. And this in-between space creates tension. The mind interprets this tension as danger, even though it is actually progress. Right before change, resistance becomes louder, doubts become sharper, and emotions feel heavier, not because the person is failing, but because the system inside them is reorganizing. At the beginning of any journey, motivation is high and expectations are optimistic. Action feels exciting because the discomfort has not yet arrived. But as repetition continues and novelty fades, effort increases while visible rewards may still be missing. This is where most people misunderstand the process. They expect change to feel encouraging all the way through, but real transformation rarely works that way. Instead, it challenges existing beliefs, routines, and emotional patterns. The body and mind are designed to protect what is familiar. So when familiar patterns start to dissolve, the brain sends warning signals in the form of fear, boredom, frustration, or exhaustion. These signals feel personal, as if something is wrong with the person, when in reality they are signs that old conditioning is losing its grip. Right before a breakthrough, the pressure intensifies. The old identity fights for survival, creating thoughts like, this isn't working, you were wasting your time, you were happier before, or this isn't who you really are. These thoughts are not truth. They are withdrawal symptoms from the old way of living. Just like the body resists sudden change in temperature, the psyche resists sudden change in standards. When someone pushes beyond their previous limits, the nervous system initially reacts with stress. Most people interpret that stress as a signal to stop, instead of recognizing it as proof that they are stepping outside the comfort zone that kept them stuck. Quitting in this moment brings instant relief. The tension drops, the fear subsides, and the mind feels calm again. That relief tricks people into believing quitting was the right decision. What they don't see is that relief is temporary, while regret quietly builds over time. The opportunity for change passes, and the same patterns return, often stronger than before. The pain they tried to avoid comes back in a different form, as dissatisfaction, frustration, or a sense of unfulfilled potential. The tragedy is not that people fail, but that they stop at the precise moment when perseverance would have rewired their identity. Internal change always happens before external results appear. The habits shift first, the mindset adjusts first, the emotional capacity expands first, results lag behind. People who understand this stay long enough for the invisible work to become visible. Those who don't mistake the silence before results as evidence that nothing is happening. They walk away just as momentum is forming, just as consistency is turning into strength, just as effort is about to compound. The moment people feel most tempted to quit is often the moment they are closest to becoming someone they have never been. Emotional pain and uncertainty often reach their peak right before a breakthrough, not as a punishment, but as a natural response to growth pushing against familiar limits. When someone steps into change, they are not just altering external behaviors, they are challenging long-held emotional patterns, beliefs, and expectations. This creates inner conflict because the mind is losing its sense of control. The unknown feels threatening, even when it carries the potential for a better future. As certainty fades, discomfort intensifies, and that discomfort is frequently mistaken for failure rather than progress. People expect breakthroughs to feel empowering, but before empowerment comes vulnerability, and before clarity comes confusion. Uncertainty is especially painful because it removes predictability. The human brain craves knowing what comes next, even if what comes next is unpleasant. Familiar pain feels safer than unfamiliar possibility. Right before a breakthrough, the old structure that once provided certainty collapses, but the new structure has not yet been built. This gap produces anxiety, self-doubt, and emotional fatigue. People begin questioning their decisions, their abilities, and even their identity. They ask whether the effort is worth it, whether they are capable, whether they should turn back. These questions are not signs of weakness, they are symptoms of transition. Emotional pain intensifies when effort has been sustained for a long time without visible reward. The longer someone invests energy without immediate results, the louder the internal resistance becomes. Frustration grows because expectations clash with reality. Hope starts to feel risky, and doubt begins to feel protective. The mind tries to reduce pain by encouraging withdrawal, rationalizing excuses, or revising goals downward. This is not because the goal is wrong, but because the mind is attempting to escape emotional discomfort. The paradox is that staying present through this discomfort is exactly what allows the breakthrough to occur, right before change takes shape. Emotional pressure peaks because identity is being renegotiated. The person is no longer who they were, but not yet who they are becoming. This identity gap creates a sense of instability. Confidence wavers because confidence is usually built on familiarity, and familiarity has been disrupted. In this phase, emotions swing unpredictably. One moment there is determination, the next there is exhaustion. One moment there is belief, the next there is fear. Many people interpret this emotional volatility as a sign that they are doing something wrong, when in reality it is evidence that transformation is underway. Breakthroughs rarely announce themselves with certainty. They emerge quietly after endurance, after repetition, after resilience has been tested. The emotional storm that precedes them is often the final test of commitment. Those who quit in this phase do so not because change was impossible, but because the emotional cost temporarily outweighed their belief in the outcome. Those who persist learn that pain does not always mean stop, and uncertainty does not always mean danger. Sometimes pain means expansion, and uncertainty means the old limitations are dissolving. Emotional pain narrows focus, making it difficult to see progress that is subtle and internal. Skills are strengthening, discipline is deepening, and emotional capacity is growing, but these shifts are not immediately rewarded with external validation. Without awareness, people assume nothing is happening. In truth, the groundwork is being laid beneath the surface. When the breakthrough finally arrives, it often feels sudden, but it is the result of enduring emotional discomfort long enough for growth to stabilize. The ability to stay present through uncertainty is what turns struggle into transformation and pressure into personal power. Growth demands a level of discomfort that most people are not prepared to tolerate for very long, which is why lasting change remains rare. The moment a person decides to raise their standards, their environment, routines, and internal dialogue begin to resist that decision. Comfort has a powerful pull because it feels safe, predictable, and familiar. Discomfort, on the other hand, feels like instability, even when it is the gateway to progress. Most people are conditioned to avoid discomfort at all costs, so when growth requires sustained effort without immediate relief, the instinct is to retreat rather than endure. The challenge is not experiencing discomfort, but staying present within it. Anyone can push themselves when motivation is high or when results are immediate. What separates those who grow from those who stay the same is the ability to remain committed when motivation fades and the work feels heavy. Discipline is built in moments when excuses feel reasonable. Endurance is forged when quitting would be socially acceptable. Growth does not ask for intensity for a day or a week. It asks for consistency through emotional resistance, boredom, and self-doubt. Most people underestimate how long discomfort lasts and overestimate how quickly results should appear. Discomfort becomes unbearable when it is interpreted as suffering without meaning. When people do not understand why they feel tension, fatigue, or frustration, they assume something is wrong. In reality, discomfort is feedback that the body and mind are adapting. Muscles grow by tearing, confidence grows by facing fear, and identity grows by repeatedly choosing action over comfort. The issue is not discomfort itself, but the belief that it should not be there. This belief causes people to abandon progress prematurely, searching for an easier path that rarely leads anywhere new. Enduring discomfort requires a shift in perspective. Instead of asking, how do I make this easier? The question becomes, how do I stay strong inside this? People who grow learn to normalize discomfort. They stop treating it as an emergency and start treating it as part of the process. This mental shift changes behavior. When discomfort no longer triggers panic, it loses its power to control decisions. The work still feels hard, but it no longer feels threatening. This is where real strength develops, not in the absence of difficulty, but in the willingness to continue despite it. Most people quit because they are waiting for reassurance before committing fully. They want proof before persistence. They want certainty before consistency. Growth rarely offers that order. It demands commitment first, then evidence later. The discomfort phase is the price of entry. Those who pay it gain resilience, self-trust, and momentum. Those who refuse it remain dependent on motivation and external validation, which fluctuates and eventually disappears. Staying longer than the average person is willing to stay compounds effort into identity. What once felt forced becomes natural. What once required discipline becomes habit. The discomfort that initially felt overwhelming gradually transforms into confidence because the person has proven to themselves that they can endure. This self-belief cannot be borrowed or taught. It must be earned through experience. Each time a person stays when they want to quit, they raise their emotional threshold. Over time, challenges that once felt impossible begin to feel manageable. The irony is that the discomfort people avoid is often shorter than the long-term discomfort of staying the same. Temporary struggle leads to permanent growth, while temporary comfort often leads to lasting dissatisfaction. Growth asks for courage in the moment, patience in the process, and faith in the unseen outcome. Those who understand this stop asking when it will get easier and start becoming stronger instead. The mind is designed to seek certainty above almost everything else, even above happiness, fulfillment, or growth. Certainty creates a sense of control, and control creates the illusion of safety. This is why people often remain in situations that are painful, limiting, or unfulfilling, simply because they are familiar. The known feels manageable, while the unknown feels threatening. When change appears, even positive change, it introduces uncertainty, and the mind responds with resistance. It would rather accept predictable discomfort than risk unpredictable possibility. This drive for certainty explains why people sabotage progress right when it begins to work. As routines shift and old patterns loosen, the mind loses its reference points. It no longer knows what to expect. And that lack of predictability triggers anxiety. Thoughts emerge that attempt to restore certainty by pulling the person back to what they already know. These thoughts often sound rational, logical, and protective. They question the timing, the feasibility, and the wisdom of continuing. What they are really doing is trying to regain control by returning to familiar ground. The problem is that certainty is not the same as security. Familiar patterns can feel safe while slowly eroding potential. People stay in unfulfilling jobs, unhealthy habits, and limiting identities because they know how to survive there. Growth, on the other hand, requires stepping into a space where survival skills are not yet proven. This feels dangerous to the mind, even when the heart senses possibility. The internal conflict between safety and expansion creates paralysis. Many people choose safety, not because it makes them happy, but because it feels controllable. The mind also uses stories to justify staying stuck. It reframes fear as realism and hesitation as wisdom. It warns against disappointment, failure, or embarrassment. These warnings are not malicious. They are protective mechanisms developed to avoid pain. The issue is that they are based on past experiences, not future potential. The mind assumes that what has happened before will happen again, and it resists any path that cannot be fully predicted. Change, by its nature, cannot be guaranteed in advance, which is why the mind often rejects it outright. Breaking free from this pattern requires recognizing that uncertainty is not the enemy. It is the gateway to growth. Every meaningful achievement once existed as an unknown outcome. Confidence is not built by eliminating uncertainty, but by learning to function within it. When people stop demanding certainty before taking action, they regain personal power. They shift from needing guarantees to trusting their ability to adapt. This trust is far more reliable than any external assurance. The need for certainty also explains why people abandon goals prematurely. As long as effort is familiar, it feels tolerable. But when progress demands new behaviors, new emotional responses, or new standards, uncertainty spikes. The mind reacts by suggesting withdrawal. Without awareness, people follow that suggestion and return to what feels known. In doing so, they trade long-term growth for short-term emotional relief. Those who grow understand that certainty is built after commitment, not before. They accept that discomfort and doubt are part of the transition. Instead of asking whether success is guaranteed, they ask whether staying the same is acceptable. By choosing uncertainty with intention, they expand their capacity and redefine safety. Over time, what once felt unknown becomes familiar, and a new level of certainty is created, one that supports growth rather than limits it. Staying committed in the hardest moments is what ultimately separates transformation from regret, because those moments reveal the true depth of a person's decision. Anyone can feel inspired when the path is clear and progress feels rewarding. Commitment is tested when effort feels heavy, results seem distant, and the internal dialogue grows discouraging. These moments force a choice between immediate relief and long-term fulfillment. Most people choose relief not because they lack desire, but because they underestimate the cost of walking away from their own potential. The hardest moments are rarely dramatic. They often show up quietly as fatigue, boredom, self-doubt, or the temptation to delay just one more day. These small moments are deceptive because they don't feel like defining crossroads, yet they determine the outcome over time. Each time a person chooses to stay committed, they reinforce an identity of reliability and strength. Each time they quit, even in subtle ways, they reinforce a pattern of retreat. Transformation is not the result of one bold decision, but of many small decisions made under pressure. Regret grows slowly and silently. It does not appear immediately after quitting. At first, there is relief. The pressure lifts, the discomfort fades, and the mind feels calm again. Over time, however, that calm is replaced by a persistent sense of dissatisfaction. The same problems return, the same limitations remain, and the awareness of what could have been begins to surface. Regret is painful not because of failure, but because of recognition. It is the realization that the obstacle was not inability, but inconsistency in the moments that mattered most. Commitment in difficult moments builds self-trust. Each time a person honors their word to themselves, they strengthen their internal foundation. Confidence grows not from success alone, but from knowing that they can rely on themselves under pressure. This self-trust becomes a source of resilience. When challenges arise, the person no longer questions whether they will quit. They focus on how they will adapt. This shift in identity changes behavior automatically. Effort becomes more consistent because quitting is no longer the default response to discomfort. Transformation requires enduring moments that feel thankless. There may be no recognition, no applause, and no immediate payoff. The reward is internal before it becomes external. Strength, discipline, and clarity develop quietly through repetition. People who stay committed long enough experience a tipping point where effort begins to feel aligned rather than forced. What once required willpower becomes part of who they are. This is when progress accelerates, not because the work changed, but because the person did. The difference between those who transform and those who regret is not willpower alone, but perspective. Those who persist understand that hard moments are temporary, while the consequences of quitting are lasting. They stop asking how to avoid difficulty and start asking what kind of person they want to become. This long-term lens allows them to endure short-term discomfort without losing direction. Staying committed in the hardest moments is an act of self-respect. It is a declaration that the future matters more than the comfort of the present. Over time, this commitment reshapes identity, standards, and expectations. The person no longer wonders what might have been because they stayed long enough to find out.